Representative Crandall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of House Bill 2630, and I want to give just a little brief background. For those who remember the first day of session, the superintendents from throughout Arizona came and had kind of a big powwow out here because they knew it was going to be a tough year for education. So they came down, kind of marched on the Capitol, and held a press conference. What they said in that press conference, they said, "Hey, legislature, we recognize we have some tough times coming up. There's 4 things we want, and the first 2, they said we want local control and we want flexibility." Then they got into equity and things. But the 2 they mentioned first, local control and flexibility. So as you know, the last 8 weeks, the House Education Committee as well as several education members have been traveling the state. As I mentioned this morning, the last 4 months, I've been to every single corner of Arizona except Cochise County, and I apologize to Representative Stevens and Fleming because I will be there soon. But everywhere we go, every time, one of the first questions is, you've got to help us. We need a little bit of flexibility with this April 15th date. We don't need you to mandate that we do it at some later date, but we need a little flexibility. And the reason we need flexibility is because we have a tremendous, it's a perfect storm coming together in 2010. We have several cuts coming to school districts that have nothing to do with this body here. And you've heard me mention those, Prop 301 sales tax, casino gaming, ELL funding being cut, things that you nor I, Republican nor Democrat, have any control over that are going to hit the schools. At the same time, we have this massive budget deficit that we're dealing with. So as these superintendents and school boards, they said, "Hey, Mr. Crandall, can you do something to give us a little flexibility?" And me and my naive state said, "Well, sure. I mean, we're here to serve you, and we know that you want flexibility and local control." I come back, and about 4 weeks ago, I go to Mr. Speaker Adams' office, and I said, "Hey, the people of Arizona, Republican and Democrat, are really asking for some kind of flexibility. What can we do, Mr. Adams, because they're not hearing any bills in the Senate?" And the Speaker says, "Well, let me meet with President Burns, and I'll get back to you on it." So he goes over and meets President Burns, and President Burns says, "I'll hear one bill. Besides the budget, I'll hear one bill, and it's this bill to grant a little bit of relief to the school districts as they negotiate and get ready for their budgets this fall." Once again, my naive state, I said, "Hey, Mr. Adams, I think this thing's going to pass easily because I'm getting both Democrats calling me and Republicans." So with that spirit, we go to appropriations, and that was the very first I heard of a group that was opposed to it. Now, it's interesting. Yesterday, I get a call from the Arizona Republic, and they say, "Hey, we want to do a story, Mr. Crandall." And I wasn't pitching for this, but they said, "Do you know that more Democrat bills have passed out of your committee than any other committee in the House?" No, I didn't know that. It wasn't an award I was pushing for. I said, "But I come from the school board area where you don't even know what party other school board members are." I know I didn't hear your bill, Tom. No, I'm just kidding. But in a school board, you don't know what party somebody is. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea. And I tried to hold the same philosophy this year. If it's a big bill for academic achievement, I'm going to hear that bill. The number 3 most important education bill this year, after Mr. Boone's 2 finance reform bills, I think, is the Lujan-Crandall High School Achievement Bill. This bill, 2630, was never, ever partisan until Tuesday. It was never partisan. It was simply a request from Arizona school districts to say, give us a little flexibility, a little local control, especially rural Arizona, and here's why rural Arizona is so concerned. Contrary to what you've heard, they're afraid that they have to give notification. They have to assume kind of worst-case scenario. I put out a range myself on my blog, educateaz.org. I put out a range of where the cuts would be for 2010, a low and a high, so that people would have that information. So I put that information out. A rural school district has to decide by April 15th whether to RIF a teacher or not. Now, here's the challenge if you live where I grew up in Safford, Arizona. You RIF a teacher, they're immediately going to start looking for a job. And where's most hiring happening? It's in Pima County and Maricopa County. That teacher is going to spend the next 30 days immediately looking for a new job, most likely in Pima or Maricopa County. All of a sudden, the district's going to get the actual 2010 budget, sometime probably in May, and they're going to say, "Oh, we don't need to RIF that teacher. Let's hire him back." Guess what? They've already taken a job in Levine, Coolidge, Florence, Sahuarita, Vale, those districts that are still growing rapidly. Well, I mean, Safford's a great place, Mr. Kopenek. You and I know that. But not every special ed or math teacher wants to drop everything and move back to Safford. And that's why the rural districts especially asked me to give them a little bit of flexibility and local control. This has nothing to do with a lack of respect for teachers. In fact, it's just the contrary. Let's don't put teachers through a hell they don't need to be through.
Mr. Crandall, 30 seconds.
Just because they don't have enough information. So as you can see, this bill is never intended to be partisan. With that, I rise in strong support and ask you that we would actually help teachers by not causing unnecessary rifts and unnecessary turmoil. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Crandall. Chair recognizes